Well, I appreciate the way you say that, but I'm very proud of doing what I'm doing. I don't call it a shutdown. I call it doing what you have to do for the benefit and for the safety of our country. But when Nancy Pelosi said, you don't have the votes in Congress, I will tell you what I was proud of. I was never more proud of my Republican Party and those congressmen and women when they saw that and they got together and they voted 217 to 185, and it wasn't even close. That was an incredible day. I'm very proud of that when she said you couldn't get the vote. And I'm not holding that against her because despite the fact that I'm not saying it was an easy meeting or even a kind meeting or a nice meeting, but in the end, I think we've come a long way. And we're going to be working very hard over the weekend, and we'll see if we can do something. So you can call it whatever you want. You can call it the Schumer or the Pelosi or the Trump shutdown. Doesn't make any difference to me. Just words.
Mr. President, my second question, sir, on federal workers, sir. Mr. President, my second question on federal workers, sir.
Yeah, just 1 second. Just 1 second, please. Go ahead.
It may be the same question. Thank you, Mr. President. 2 questions just to follow up on DACA.
Yeah.
Are you open to a path to citizenship in theory for DACA recipients? And then can you explain to federal employees of the agencies that are closed, which are not Homeland Security, why those agencies should stay closed? Homeland Security is significant in of itself if it stayed closed.
Because we want to do what's right, and we want to do it all at one time. We don't want to take it in pieces. We just don't want to do that.
This is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got mystery. We've got intrigue. We've got ourselves a spy. And we've also got informants.
I specialize in a very specific type of security.
Ah, you don't say, huh? All right, well, we'll get to some of that. I want to start you off with this great article from the Daily Caller, and I think this is essential reading, so we're going to cover the whole thing. This was written at 10 a.m. on the 14th by a senior Trump official, okay? Keeping in mind that is an unnamed senior Trump official. The title is, I'm a senior Trump official, and I hope a long shutdown smokes out the resistance. As one of the senior officials working without a paycheck, a few words of advice for the president's next move at shuttered government agencies. Lock the doors, sell the furniture, and cut them down. Federal employees are starting to feel the strain of the shutdown, and I am one of them. But for the sake of our nation, I hope it lasts a very long time, till the government is changed and can never return to its previous form. The lapse in appropriations is more than a battle over a wall. It is an opportunity to strip wasteful government agencies for good. On an average day, roughly 15% of the employees around me are exceptional patriots serving their country. I wish I could give competitive salaries to them and no one else. But 80% feels no pressure to produce results. If they don't feel like doing what they're told, they don't. Why would they? We can't fire them. They avoid attention, plan their weekend, schedule vacation, their second job, their next position. Some do this in the same position for more than a decade. They do nothing that warrants punishment and nothing of external value. That is their workday. Errands for the sake of errands. Administering, refining, following, and collaborating on process. Process is your friend, is what delusional civil servants tell themselves. Even senior officials must gain approval from every rank across their department, other agencies, and work units for basic administrative chores. Process is what we serve. Process keeps us safe. Process is our core value. It takes a lot of people to maintain the process. Process provides jobs. In fact, there are process experts and certified process managers who protect the process. Then there are the 5% with Moxie, career managers. At any given time, they can change, clarify, or add to the process, even to distort or block policy counsel for the president. Saboteurs peddling opinion as research, tasking their staff on pet projects, or pitching wasteful grants to their friends. Most of my career colleagues actively work against the president's agenda. This means I typically spend about 15% of my time on the president's agenda and 85% of my time trying to stop sabotage, and we have no power to get rid of them until the shutdown. Due to a lack of funding, many federal agencies are now operating more effectively from the top down on a fraction of their workforce, with only select essential personnel serving national security tasks. One might think this is how government should function, but Bureaucracies operate from the bottom up, a collective of self-generated ideas. Ideas become initiatives, formalize into offices. They seek funds from Congress and become bureaus or sub-agencies, and maybe one day grow to be their own independent agency like ours. The nature of a big administrative bureaucracy is to grow to serve itself. I watch it and I fight it daily. When the agency is full, employees held liable for poor performance respond with threats, lawsuits, complaints, and process in at least a dozen offices, taking years of mounting paperwork with no fear of accountability, extending their careers while no real work is done. Do we succumb to such extortion? Yes. We pay them settlements, we waive bad reviews, and we promote them. Many government agencies have adopted the position that more complaints are good because it shows inclusion in, you guessed it, the process. When complaints come, it is cheaper to pay them off than to hold public servants accountable. The result? People accused of serious offenses are not charged, and self-proclaimed victims are paid by you, the American taxpayer. The message to federal supervisors is clear. Maintain the status quo, or face allegations. Many federal employees truly believe that doing tasks more efficiently and cutting out waste by closing troubled programs instead of expanding them is morally wrong, as one cried to me. I get it. These are their pets. It is tough to put them down and let go, and many resist. This phenomenon was best summed up by a colleague who said the goal in government is to do nothing. If you try to get things done, that's when you will run into trouble. But President Trump can end this abuse. Senior officials can reprioritize during an extended shutdown, focus on valuable results, and weed out the saboteurs. We do not want most employees to return because we are working better without them. Sure, we empathize with families making tough financial decisions like mine, and just like private citizens who have to find other work and bring competitive value every day while paying more than a third of their salary in federal taxes. President Trump has created more jobs in the private sector than the furloughed federal workforce. Now that we are shut down, not only are we identifying and eliminating much of the sabotage and waste, but we are finally working on the president's agenda. President Trump does not need Congress to address the border emergency. And yes, it is an emergency. Billions upon billions of hard-earned tax dollars are still being dumped into foreign aid programs every year that do nothing for America's interest or national security. The president does not need congressional funding to deconstruct abusive agencies who work against his agenda. This is a chance to effect real change, and his leverage grows stronger every day the shutdown lasts. The president should add to his demands, including a vote on all of his political nominees in the Senate. Send the career appointees back. Many are in the 5% of saboteurs and resistance leaders. A word of caution, to be a victory, this shutdown must be different than those of the past and should achieve lasting disruption with two major changes, or it will hurt the president. The first thing we need out of this is better security, particularly at the southern border. Our founders envisioned a free market night watchman state, not the bungled, bloated bureaucracy our government has become. But we have to keep the uniformed officers paid, which is an emergency. Ideally, continue a resolution to pay the essential employees only if they are truly working on national security. Furloughed employees should find other work, never return, and not be paid. Listen to what he said again. Furloughed employees should find other work, never return, and not be paid. Secondly, we need savings for taxpayers. If this fight is merely rhetorical bickering with Nancy Pelosi, we all lose, especially the president. But if it proves that government is better when smaller, focusing only on essential functions that serve Americans, then President Trump will achieve something great that Reagan was only bold enough to dream. And if you'll remember, Reagan shut down the government too, and it was about air traffic controllers. They decided to strike, and he went ahead and just let them strike. And I don't think a lot of them ever came back. I think mostly just the upper management ended up keeping their jobs, and it was about it. Reagan basically called their bluff. The president's instincts are right. Most Americans will not miss non-essential government functions. A referendum to end government plunder must happen. Wasteful government agencies are fighting for relevance, but they will lose. Now is the time to deliver historic change by cutting them down forever. Okay, so it's a bit of a lengthy article, and I want to actually get you through another article today too that adds on to this, because I think this is so important to truly understand. So what this senior Trump official is basically saying is to shut this down. Let a lot of these furloughed employees who are basically just pork fat, right, aren't really doing anything. Just let them go. Cut them free. After all, Trump can make a lot more headway without a lot of these people getting in the way. So in a lot of ways, this shutdown is brilliant. But this idea is still a little bit nebulous, so let me take you over to The American Thinker. This is by Thomas Lifson, written on the 15th, entitled Trump's Shutdown Trap. Has President Trump suckered Democrats and the deep state into a trap that will enable a radical downsizing of the federal bureaucracy? In only 5 more days of the already longest government shutdown in history, 25 days and counting as of today, a heretofore obscure threshold will be reached, enabling permanent layoffs of bureaucrats furloughed 30 days or more. Don't believe me that federal bureaucrats can be laid off? Well, in bureaucraties, a layoff is called an RIF, a reduction in force. And of course, it comes with a slew of civil service protections. But if the guidelines are followed, bureaucrats can be laid off, as in no more job. It is all explained by Michael Roberts here. And there is I'll leave this link here for you. You can see the definition here. It's off a legal website. A reduction in force is a thoughtful and systematic elimination of positions. For all practical purposes, a government RIF is the same thing as a layoff. Organizations must stick to predetermined criteria when sorting out what happens to each employee. They must communicate with employees how and why decisions are made. In deciding who stays and who goes, federal agencies must take 4 factors into account. Number 1, tenure. Number 2, veteran status. Number 3, total federal civilian and military service. And number 4, performance. You would think number 4 would be number 1. Just saying. Agencies cannot use RIF procedures to fire bad employees. A lot of procedures must be followed, and merit performance is the last consideration. But based on the criteria above, employees already furloughed can be laid off or RIF'd once they have been furloughed for 30 days or 22 work days. When agencies furlough employees for more than 30 calendar days or 22 discontinuous work days, they must use RIF procedures. An employee can be terminated or moved into an available position. This seems to be what was referenced in this remarkable essay written by an unidentified senior Trump official, and that's the one that we just read here, published in the Daily Caller, which vouches for the authenticity of the author and explains that it is protecting him from adverse career consequences should the name become known. Yeah, precisely. If you're wondering why would this official not name themselves, well, clearly that could have some backfire, right? Because that's going to expose a lot of fat. I strongly recommend reading the whole thing, and we did. The purported senior official makes the case that devotion to process eats up most of the time of federal bureaucrats and is also used by enemies of the president Trump's initiative to stymie the legitimate orders issued by his senior official. And I'm not going to read you these because this is the excerpt from the Daily Caller here. Then the senior official notes what I have just called the trap, and that's what this is right here. Most of my career colleagues actively work against the president's agenda. This means I typically spend about 15% of my time on the president's agenda and 85% of my time trying to stop sabotage, and we have no power to get rid of them until the shutdown. So that's really telling, isn't it? Those officials who waste time and stymie the president's initiative now are not present because they are not categorized as essential. And let me take you down here. If this was the plan all along, it would explain why President Trump goaded Chuck and Nancy in his televised meeting with them last year, boasting that he would claim credit for the shutdown. How could they resist a prolonged shutdown when he made it so easy to blame him? President Trump has proven that he is a disruptor who changes the framework of thinking on major issues by refusing to accept the givens, the assumptions of how things always have been done and therefore always must be done. Yeah, he tossed them a softball. They were really looking forward to blaming him for this shutdown because they thought it was going to have dire consequences. Meanwhile, Trump is more effective now, basically addition by subtraction, because you're taking away this 85% that's been working against him. So, who is the senior official? Well, I don't know, but I think Stephen Miller is the sort of bold thinker who might volunteer to telegraph the strategy just 5 days before the deadline. Give Chuck and Nancy something to think about and probably reject as unthinkable. Then they can't complain that they weren't warned once the trap is sprung. Such a mass RIF would be the Trump version of Ronald Reagan firing the air traffic controllers when they went on an illegal strike in 1981. That was completely unexpected by his enemies, vehemently criticized, and successful. Among other benefits, it taught the leaders of the USSR that Ronald Reagan was a man whose threats cannot be dismissed as mere rhetoric. If you think that Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, Angela Merkel and any other foreign leaders would not draw the same conclusion from a massive RIF, then you are kidding yourself. Yeah, so this has some big consequences. And that's why I wanted to take you through both of these articles so thoroughly, because I think it's really important to understand what's possible.